Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 181 of the podcast today. So today on the show, we get to listen into a recent webinar, or a webinar that happened in late May, whatever you call recent, but we listen into our first Inspirational Collisions webinar. We hope that Inspirational Collisions can become a series, but it was really born out of the need to tell the real stories of entrepreneurship in Rochester, hear from entrepreneurs themselves how and why they're building their business in Rochester, understand what barriers they're facing, and how they've navigated those challenges. And we also really want to leave listeners with some tangible takeaway that they can apply to their personal or professional life in this series. So in May, for our very first Inspirational Collision event, we were joined on Zoom by Rochester entrepreneur Leena Pradhan-Nabzdyk. Leena is the CEO and founder of Canomiks. This is a biotechnology company that makes food as medicine a reality. They're bringing cutting-edge science in the form of genomics and bioinformatics to help companies develop products using the latest scientific technologies, and they really aim to understand how ingredients affect human genes. So don't miss out on this conversation today. Stay tuned to hear the story of Canomiks and what takeaways Leena had for the community. We also definitely were having some internet connectivity issues during the webinar and internet surges, but I promise you these don't distract from the conversation, so stay tuned today to hear more from Leena. And we're interested in who you want to hear from at upcoming Inspirational Collisions events. So if you have some suggestions, let us know. You can comment in the notes wherever this is going out, on YouTube, on our social media, or you can send us an email at rochesterrising@gmail.com if you know of a great entrepreneur that would have some real key takeaways for the community that they would love to share. So let us know. You can also find the video version of this webinar on the Collider YouTube page. And as a reminder as well, Rochester Rising is the storytelling arm of Collider, which is a Rochester-based 501c3 nonprofit that supports Rochester entrepreneurs through space, storytelling, events, and education. You can find out more about Collider on our website at collider.mn. A reminder as well that you can find our podcasts pretty much wherever you listen into podcast content. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and we also put this out as a video on our YouTube channel. You don't see us talking with the people, but just a still, and you can listen to the audio if that's how you prefer to listen into podcasts. You can also find more stories about Rochester entrepreneurs on our website at rochesterrising.org. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right, so now on to the conversation today with Inspirational Collisions with Leena Pradhan-Nabzdyk. Thanks to all of you for joining us today for our first ever Inspirational Collisions event. This hopefully is an ongoing series, and it's really grown out of a need to tell the real stories of entrepreneurship in Rochester. It's a space and time to hear from entrepreneurs themselves and understand how and why they're growing a business here in Rochester, what barriers they faced along the way, and how they've navigated these roadblocks. Be sure you stick around until the very end of the webinar today. We always try and create meaningful events, and I know that a lot of us joining here today and listening in are entrepreneurs, and our time is of extreme value. Your time is of extreme value, and we want to make sure that we're using this time in a meaningful way. So not only do we want to share with you some inspiration, capital, stories of entrepreneurship, but we also want to leave you with something very tangible, something that you can take away and apply to your personal or professional life. So stay tuned till the very end of today's webinar for that. So some housekeeping items before we get started today. My name's Amanda Leitner. I'm the Director of Communications at Collider. Collider is a Rochester-based 501c3 nonprofit that serves Rochester entrepreneurs through events, education, space, and storytelling. So we're very honored to be joined today by Leena Pradhan-Nabzdyk for this very first Inspirational Collisions event. I met Leena last fall when she very first moved to Rochester with her family from the Boston area, which she'll share more about that with you today. She's really been just a wonderful person to get to know. She really dove headfirst into the community when she got here to understand the ecosystem, understand what it had to offer, figure out where she fit in. and she took the time to understand how she could help the ecosystem along its way. So I'm glad our paths have crossed many times since we met last fall. And I think we met during Entrepreneurship Week, actually. So it was kind of a great time to be in this space. So a little bit about Leena. She is CEO and president of Canomiks. She grew up on the outskirts of Mumbai, India, and came to the US to pursue a PhD in pharmacology from Tulane University. She's an accomplished life science professional and faculty member of Harvard Medical School, and she has extensive experience in developing alliances between industry and academia and spearheading multidisciplinary projects in the field of diabetes, cardiovascular, and allied areas. She also has an MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management from their Executive MBA program. She has translated all this expertise into the founding of Canomiks. Canomiks uses cutting-edge omics science, machine learning, and bioinformatics to help customers create an evidence-based pipeline of dietary supplements and functional foods. Canomiks has created a new standard for benchmarking and the effect of active ingredients used in dietary supplements and functional foods and drinks. So Leena moved to Rochester last summer in August of 2019, along with her husband and son, and she immediately fell in love with Rochester and its entrepreneurial ecosystem and is now in the midst of moving Canomiks operations to Rochester. We're very honored to have Leena jump in and be the first person in this new series, and we're very grateful as well to each of you listening in here today and spending an hour of your time with us this afternoon. I know that all of you listening in could be doing anything else with your time, so thanks for choosing to be here with us. And we want to make sure that this time is tailored to you as well, the people listening in. So in case you have not realized this yet, or you're new to Zoom or new to Zoom webinars, if you're joining as a listener, we won't be able to see you. We won't be able to hear you. We can just see and hear the panelists. So unless you're myself, Leena, or Jamie Sansbach, no one will be able to see you, so you don't have to worry about that. Jamie, you can just see him as a logo, and he's kind of controlling the tech behind the scene. But we still want each of you to participate. So I'm going to ask each of you, everybody listening in right now, to go down to the bottom of their Zoom panel and open the question and answer button, or press it. I don't know what you would call it, but open that up. And I want to encourage each of you, or challenge each of you, to ask a question to Leena starting now. And Leena's going to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're going to open up the space to your questions and answers. So be sure to write them in as we're going. And like I said, I really challenge each of you to think of just one question to ask her. You also have the opportunity to kind of upvote questions. So if you type a question in, if you have a question similar to someone else that typed one in, or you think it's really important question, you should be able to give it a thumbs up, and it'll kind of bump it up to the top of the queue to get your question answered. So our webinar today is a pilot, but we'd like to keep this going perhaps on a monthly basis. And we also want to ask you, the people listening in, who you want to hear from. So if there's a Rochester entrepreneur that you think would be a great guest for a next Inspirational Collisions, let us know. The best way might be just to email us at hello@collider.mn, or you can email me at amanda@collider.mn, or interact with us in any way on social media, however, and let us know who you want to hear from. Some final things before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and it's also being live streamed on Facebook, on the Collider Facebook page. So if people are listening in there, on Facebook, you can certainly ask your questions there, but we'll be mainly focusing on questions in the Zoom webinar. And you can still join in on the Zoom webinar if you're listening in on Facebook, so you can do that as well. Besides listening in today, this will also be shared as a video on the Collider YouTube page, as well as a podcast on the Rochester Rising podcast. So you have multiple opportunities to listen again, which I'm sure you'll all want to do. I think we will jump in then. But again, keep your question and answer tab open and start typing in your questions. So, all right. Well, Leena, we'll go over to you. Thanks so much for being here today, first of all. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you, Jamie. for inviting me, for organizing this first webinar. I'm really proud and really humbled to be here. And thank you for all the attendees. Feel free to ask any question. I'm happy to answer all your questions and even connect with you afterwards. So don't, take your time if you have to ask any questions later on after the podcast.
So we touched a little bit on what Canomiks was, but I'd like to start just by asking you, what is Canomiks, if you can share more about the company and your mission with us.
Yeah, so at Canomiks, we really want to make food as medicine a reality. That's our mission. And our values support that mission. So our values are about truth, trust, and transparency. And you may know this, but a lot of the dietary supplement, functional food industry, the products that are developed, a lot of them are really good products, but oftentimes very little science gets used in the product development as well as in the ingredient development. And what we are trying to do at Canomiks is to bring cutting-edge science, such as genomics and bioinformatics, and help companies in the space develop products using latest scientific technologies. And what I mean by that is we have accumulated a lot of data around how do these products, including just single ingredients, how do they affect human genes, and thereby how do they affect human wellness. So we've acknowledged, we have accumulated a lot of knowledge around that. And then we developed algorithms around, can we develop recipes based on our algorithms? In addition to that, if you have a recipe, if your mom gives you a recipe, and if you buy the ingredients from a corner store versus like a fancy store, your end product is only going to be as good as the ingredients you use. And that's what we realized in this space, is that it's not just what your formulation recipe is, but it is also important to have ingredients that are really good quality. And so we can certify and test the ingredients at the level of how they affect human genes. So no other company is really providing this kind of in-depth understanding about the ingredients that get used. What we really want to do is, again, provide all kinds of R&D and latest technologies-based R&D to the industry. And we are working with several different companies. A lot of times I get asked, do we provide services or do we make our own products and sell it to the customers? We are not doing that. Our goal right now is to really work with other companies and create new standards in testing as well as new standards in product development. So that's what we're doing at Canomiks.
So like we talked about in the beginning, you started Canomiks in the Boston area. You're in the process of moving it to Rochester. So what has that journey been like to build upon your momentum here in Rochester, to move your operations from the Boston area to Rochester? And what barriers did you face during this process, and how did you or did you not overcome those?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in the intro, I moved to Rochester with my husband, who's a consultant at Mayo. And right when we were making that decision for our family, I also had to have a conversation with my co-founders. And our company is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we are 3 co-founders. And as an entrepreneur, that's your family, outside of your immediate family, outside of your real family. So I had to take my 2 co-founders in confidence, and we had a conversation around, hey, if I move, there were 2 options. Either we move the company with me, or we find somebody else to run the company in Massachusetts. My 2 other co-founders are very much involved, but they're more on the strategic or more on the scientific side of things at Canomiks. I'm the one who's really running the company and on the operations. So they didn't even blink about it. They said, wherever you are, the company should be based there. And so it was, in that sense, a very easy decision. But then I had to make sure on the other end in Rochester that there was support, there was, there were resources available, right from, the ecosystem to, my CPA had to get involved to ask about taxes, etc. So all these things that you have to, put a check mark on. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, the most important thing for me was a supportive network. As an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely. A lot of times you don't know, unless you're like a serial entrepreneur and on your fifth company. But even then, it is hard because every company is different, and you're an entrepreneur. That means you're solving a problem that most likely people haven't, able to either solve it, or you're trying to solve it in a different way. And so, there's not much that you can look up to say, oh, this person did it this way, so possibly it will work for me. Especially something like what we are doing is very different than what has been done before. So I had to look into not only resources and networks and other entrepreneurs. They don't necessarily have to be in your space, but there are some challenges that are common to all entrepreneurs. Talent, if we grow our company here, would we be able to hire the right type of people? So all these things, I literally had to make an Excel sheet as to what and prioritize them. Okay, maybe for this we can still outsource and go outside of Rochester, or for this we can look somewhere else. But there are some fundamental things for a company that you absolutely need to have. One is support from the overall ecosystem, but also able to hire people. And there may not be people available, but would people be moving in? And it was sort of perfect timing, right? DMC is getting big. Everybody now knows about DMC, and there is a lot of this momentum right now in Rochester. And a company that is not coming from Mayo is kind of, it's new. But having said that, I have had meetings with people from the Mayo. Even they have been supportive, irrespective of the fact that my company was not incubated from Mayo. And so all these important points on my Excel sheet had to be checked off. And so that's how we made the decision whether and again, we had about 16, 17 months to prepare for that, because my husband was getting recruited, I think, starting October of 2017. And we didn't move here until end of July of last year. So that, and then how has it been since we have moved here? One thing that I did and I was proactive about was to really attend as many events as possible and to network as much as possible. And so I think starting in September, I think I attended one of the first Medical Alley events, or maybe it was even August, the very first month that we moved here. And I made connections there, and some of the people I met there are still friends with me and are still helping me out. And so I think it's really important to get outside of comfort zone and go meet people, and not just the same kind of people, not just people from your own background, but also people from other backgrounds and other industries. So that for sure. And then in Rochester, I met you, Amanda, and that has been extremely helpful. And Amanda, I remember one day we were sitting at Cafe Steam and you said, oh, you should meet this person. I think this will be really important. And as soon as we were done, Amanda was like, hey, this is Leena. I just met her, but by the way, I'm introducing her to you now. And I think that has been, I've been completely taken by surprise. I mean, how much there is enthusiasm around entrepreneurship and how much people have been helpful. When I moved here through my husband's Mayo connections and through the Mayo office of the tech venture office, I was introduced to Chris Shad of DMC, and he connected me to a lot of people, including Tracy, who I can see she's attending this webinar right now. So, and then through Tracy, I met other people. So I think it's been phenomenal, networking and meeting other people. And I think every entrepreneur, irrespective of if they're within their own ecosystem and have been there for 5 or 10 years, I think that is the most important thing. And that is what has been important for me in Rochester as well.
Awesome. So we have one more question before we open it up to Q&A. I know there are people listening and no one has typed a question in yet. So everyone think of a question to write to Leena or to type to Leena. But my final question for you before we open it up to the audience is, you could be doing anything else. What motivates you to be an entrepreneur? Why follow this path rather than any other you could have chosen?
So as you know, as you introduced me, I am still faculty member at Harvard Medical School. I'm part-time there, but I was on a different path. And while I was, doing my teaching and my mentoring and running my lab, I'm assistant professor. One thing that always came up about me, and if you were to ask other people, is, if you want to get stuff done, go to Leena. And it didn't matter if it was, related to my research or if it was related to something else, or if she doesn't know, she'll make sure that she will tell you where to go. And that has always been my approach to things. Why wait for somebody else to solve a problem? Is it possible for you to solve that problem? Or maybe you can, if you know someone, you can, guide other people to, hey, this is a problem. Bring it to the light, right? Oh, hey, can you solve this? And I do this all the time about everything. Like if I see a problem, I just can't, why are we not doing something about it? And that's how, my itch for entrepreneurship began. And I didn't have any formal training in business. I was a straight science major and biology major and pharmacology PhD. But I did a lot of leadership administrative work as a faculty member. And through that, I learned a lot of problem solving, etc. And I decided to go to business school and came across wonderful people, my professors, my classmates at MIT. So that helped me a lot. And then when I was just done with my MBA, my co-founder, who is a serial entrepreneur, approached and said, "Hey, this is another idea I have. What do you think about it?" And that's the beginning of Canomiks and my entrepreneurial journey. But having said that, I always think about even people in bigger organizations can be entrepreneurs. If you're taking on a challenge at your organization, and if you're trying to solve it, you are an entrepreneur. So don't think of yourself as, I'm not an entrepreneur. You don't have to have your own company. You don't have to build your own business. You could be an entrepreneur just by solving challenges within a bigger organization.
So now we're going to open it up for your questions. So again, please type them in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll just ask Leena our questions. But so I encourage you all to do that. So we have a question for you, Leena. What do you feel has been your biggest challenge here in Rochester?
I think so. For what we do, for Canomiks, we are looking for a wet lab space. So my company is a life sciences company. And I think early on when we met Amanda and I think Jamie too, we talked about that, but slowly it's getting solved. I've been having multiple conversations with, important stakeholders in the ecosystem about that. And hopefully soon we will have a shared wet lab space, because if you want to build out a life sciences sort of an ecosystem here, I think that is something that you would absolutely need. And so that has been, but I shouldn't say it's a challenge, it's an opportunity. That's how I look at it. So, hopefully that will get resolved soon. But other than that, I really can't think of, when I was moving here, everybody said, "Oh my God, you're moving from Boston, the biggest hub." And, for an entrepreneur, it is all about getting work done, and wherever that work gets done, I think that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter, where that happens, as long as that work gets done, as long as you create that value, I think that's the most important thing.
So you mentioned the value of kind of networking, getting involved in an ecosystem. There could be some people listening in who are newer to the ecosystem, but what kind of suggestions do you have of ways people should look to get involved when they're newer into the community?
Yeah, right now we are stuck in our homes, or, we can't commingle right now because of COVID-19. Someday this will be over, but sign up for events. Like, I think I met one of the attendees I can see on the list. I met her at Nidhi at the cup. What is that called? Jamie organizes
1 Million Cups.
Yes, 1 million cups. Sorry, I have fished at that before in Boston too. But yes, at 1 million cups. And so, just attend, sign up for as many things as possible. Again, it doesn't have to be within your industry or, coming from life sciences. I think the pitches I attended that day, a couple of them were not in life sciences. So it doesn't matter. Just make connections, go out and pitch. That's the other thing too, Go pitch. If there is an open event, just go pitch, just practice your pitch. So when you're ready now to pitch in front of your investors or in front of your clients, all those questions have been worked out. So make sure, don't miss the opportunity for networking and pitching.
I see a lot of women in the participants. I wanted to ask you and people who are researchers and scientists, what was that kind of transition like from having your PhD, doing, biomedical research as we traditionally think about it, and then jumping into a startup?
I think we are, as PhD, as scientists, I think we have this unique personality that we develop over time, where we are so used to our results failing and our experiments failing, and getting bad reviews from publications, that I think we try to solve so many hard problems anyway. Entrepreneurship is not much different from that. You constantly get told that, oh, your idea, but you constantly get challenged. Oh, but that, I don't think you're going to get clients. As long as you have faith in what you do and you have done your research, I think everything else follows. And I think it's just keeping at it. Perseverance is the number one factor. You get beat down, you wake up the next day, and you keep doing it all over again. And then, just like when you're doing your PhD or even after your PhD, you have mentors. So mentorship is extremely, I didn't talk about that earlier, but even in Rochester, I have encountered so many phenomenal mentors. Keep talking, keep discussing your idea. And this whole thing about, oh, I'm going to keep this completely secret till I'm ready to, I don't think, it's very hard, just like in your research, it's hard to just for somebody else to come and just start replicating your work and sort of like stealing your science. It's the same thing in entrepreneurship. As long as you have a solid idea and you have worked at it enough and you have researched it enough, go talk to potential advisors, go get opinions of people outside of, your community. I think that's the most important thing. And I think that's the similarity between being a scientist and, being an entrepreneur. It's not much, of course, there will be things that you will be learning, and every day I learn about new things. For example, I didn't do financial modeling, or I didn't know what a 409A valuation was. Of course, you have to learn a lot of different skills, but the basis of it is still the same, just hard work, researching, and not giving up, which we all do as scientists anyway. So.
This one's kind of a two-part question. So what stage of development are you at with Canomiks right now? And, when you're looking to fundraise, do you find it harder to attract venture capital dollars when you're based here in the Midwest as opposed to being based in Boston?
So what stage are we at? So we, early on, we started generating revenue by providing, so we found a gap and we started monetizing that right away, which was providing scientific services to natural product industry. And so we started generating revenue. So we are revenue positive, but we didn't have a model which is scalable, right? So this was more like a consulting model. And so we had to come up with something that was more scalable, that was more time efficient, money efficient, and it could be replicable, right? And so while we are providing these big project R&D services, we started, learning about the industry itself. Again, all three of us co-founders come from a very clinical biotech pharma background, and we were new to the industry. So we started asking a lot of questions to our existing customers, our potential customers, and really figure out what that pain point was. And everybody pointed out towards the quality of the ingredients. And so we put our, scientist hats back on and said, oh, let's figure out how we can solve this problem using, again, science, because that's the basis of everything we do. And so now we have come up with this ingredient testing, ingredient certification platform, and we are about to launch that at some point this year. Everything has been delayed given the circumstances right now, but our first launch is going to be for CBD testing. Hopefully later in the fall or later this year, we will be doing that. As far as investment, attracting investment, being a Rochester company, I think everything is so global these days. I don't think that will be, or I don't think that's much of an, we've been talking to nobody. I've talked to investors And I've always been upfront in those 15 months that we were planning to move, that nobody blinked. Oh my God, you're going. As long as you create the value, as long as you explain your story, and as long as you let them know that there are resources available, I think that's not attracting investment. Is not. Our clients are all over the world. We have had clients in Southeast Asia and India, in UK now. So we are a global company, and attracting and investments are these days also global. So I don't think that's an issue.
Here's another question for you, and please continue to type in your questions. Do you think obtaining an MBA has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yes, quite a bit. First of all, it gave me a lot of confidence on my own to go ahead and do this. I would be completely lost. And getting an MBA is, as much as it is about learning new subjects and learning new skills, it is also about networking again. I learned so much. Again, my class was a much older class than your regular MBA. I think the average age of my class, because I was in the executive MBA program, was I think about 41. And so I think as much as it was about learning from my professors, it was also about connecting with my cohort and my classmates and people above me, people in the class under me. So it's a big network. In fact, one of the first people that I mentioned that I was moving to Minnesota is my good friend who runs UEL, who's director of UEL, Diane Rucker. And so so she was like, "Oh yeah, come to Minnesota and let's chat." And so so it's your network is always, again, I keep going back to the same thing, your network, and it's a give and take relationship. But you can, you have to give, and and then only then you can expect maybe to get something back. But you have, so you have to build your network.
So here's another question for you. When you're looking to hire, what skill sets, talents do you think you'll be looking for when you're ready to scale?
Yeah, so ready to scale. It's almost like my potential investor is asking this question. So who was your first hire? During this journey, I also realized a lot of things about myself. I have been doing science, and I speak the language of science, and but the other thing that I've learned about myself is I love talking to people and doing business development, and everything that we've done at Canomiks so far has been word of mouth and organic growth. And that's how we have gotten clients, by me going around everywhere and pitching and, starting conversations and networking. So I love biz development. And while I can do the science, and my co-founder Manoj can do the science, that would be one of the first people, because we will be setting up a lab in Rochester, and we would be hiring somebody, from scientific background. Eventually, we will have to have a sales force, etc., as we grow and as we scale up. But one of the first couple of hires would be maybe even helping me with biz dev, but also somebody who's going to help me operations and running a lab. So that fits into the Mayo profile of people, and some of the people I see here.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. One of the first things they tell you, like when you take a lot of lean startup classes, is, thinking about your personal life and talking about navigating risk with your spouse. What advice do you have for people who are thinking about a startup, or maybe in the beginning stages of a startup, and what's part of a useful or a productive conversation with your spouse, and talking about risk, talking about balancing everybody's values?
So balancing, I don't know how to do that. I just take up a lot of stuff on my plate. For example, I was, the day I accepted my MBA class position, I found out I was pregnant, and I still decided to go ahead with it. So that was kind of tricky time for us as a family. My husband was still in training. But one of the things that, that's also really important is, where you are in your life, right? I definitely missed the boat of the 20-year-old starting a company where you don't have many responsibilities. Most of the times, not all the time. A lot of times people do have responsibilities, even young people. But, so I definitely missed that boat. So now I'm on the sort of the other end. And, you always look at, when I go sometimes pitch, I find, 23-year-olds pitching against me. But I think I also bring a lot of wisdom and experience to the table. But the conversation that I had with my husband was that, he was in a long-term training, and he's an ICU trained doctor. He's a cardiothoracic anesthesiologist. He's a foreign graduate from Germany and all of that. So his extended training, I think we counted from medical school to when he was done, got his first job, which was last year, was I think 17 years or something like that. So that was a long haul. But up until that, I supported him. One of the things we did, and this is a very practical advice, is that I did get loans for my MBA, but other than that, we led a very simple life. We didn't, take on too many debts, I do the same thing with the company. Unless you know that there's a definite ROI on it, don't go ahead and spend. We didn't buy big, and once he was done with training, we didn't buy big fancy cars, or we didn't, buy the biggest house on the block, etc. So I think you have to have that conversation with your spouse, and where you are, at what stage of life you are, and what kind of lifestyle you want to lead. And so, of course, at the end of the day, you have to be happy, right? And maybe a big house makes you happy, or maybe an entrepreneurial gig that doesn't pay you makes you happy. So I chose the latter, but it's all about growing. And and I always tell people that money will follow. If you follow your passion, money will follow. If you're doing the right thing, money will follow. So if your eye is on doing the right thing, doing it the right way, everything else for success follows. But yeah, so now my husband is sort of supporting the family now that we are here. So I still have my part-time job at Harvard that also pays.
So I think a big focus right now, obviously, is on COVID-19 and how that's impacted businesses. So can you talk a little bit about how has COVID-19, this pandemic, affected you professionally, and then on a personal level, how do you kind of manage your day during this time?
Yeah, so I have two kids. I'll talk first about personally. I have two kids. My older one, she's self-sufficient. She's 23 years old, lives in Boston, works for Boston Children's Hospital. She's doing well. My younger one is 6 years old. And as I mentioned before, my husband is an ICU doctor. So he's quite busy. He works long hours one week, and the following week he has the time off. But now I have a 6-year-old at home, and it's been hard to manage, his time and make sure that he gets the attention. And, I'm constantly on call. So he has video bombed some of my conferences and some of my meetings. Amanda saw me, tell him, oh, this is that important meeting. You can't really come here right now, Richard. So he's figured, I think children are very smart and they understand. But, again, with my husband's job, I can't do much about it. So we just had to figure out how to take care of ourselves. And as far as Canomiks goes, we are actually in a, given this tragedy and everything that has happened around us, a lot of focus is on wellness and health. And at Canomiks, I'm getting so many calls, and the reason I'm busy is because all of a sudden, all these calls and all these emails started pouring in. Oh, can you help us do this? Can you help us? Okay, we are looking into this now. We are looking into wellness. What is so? For Canomiks, we've gotten busy. There are potential customers. There are new customers that will be signing up. Other than the supply chain being, a little problematic, I don't think we were fortunate enough that, we will survive it. But a couple of my investors called me right away. Hey, what do you think? How are we going to survive? I'm like, I think we are okay. And, we will be okay. Our launch will be, of course, delayed a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, given the situation. And then again, jumping back to the personal side, I used to do a little bit of amateur photography. So I picked up my camera again. I started taking pictures, and moving from Boston to Rochester, now I have a big backyard. I never had that in Boston, always lived in small condos. And so my son and I, we started putting bird feeders out and inviting birds in our garden, and I started doing gardening. And so, all those things have helped with the mental stress, and it's an activity that my son and we do together. And, he's very proud about it. We get to spend time together. We connect with the nature. So those things have really, helped us quite a bit. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I have my bird feeder out in the yard too, and seeing all the all the interesting wildlife that goes into.
So one other thing I did was on social media, on my personal social media, I actually we started posting pictures of these birds. And I started this group of friendly visitors in your backyard and around your house. And I invited everybody. And now it's become, like everybody's posting all kinds of animals and birds from all around the world on that Facebook page. So I barely post now, like maybe once in like 2 days, but everyone is, like all my friends and their friends are posting on it. So that's kind of like fun activity. And then my son and I will go through all the pictures and we'll talk about the birds and, the animals. So that's been fun too.
We'll do a final call for any questions. Otherwise, we wanted to leave people with something they could take away and kind of apply to their personal or professional life. And I know you wanted to talk about something to apply to business development. So what kind of tidbit did you want to leave everyone with today?
Yeah, I think so. The most, and I think we've already talked about this, but I think sign up for networking. Go on Collider's website. They always have all kinds of interesting information. Go on the DMC website. Go on Medical Alley website if you're in healthcare, and sign up for, now it's, everything is virtual, but, still sign up, get to meet people. As we have adapted through this whole phase of virtual meetings and virtual, I think people are getting better at it. And I've gotten better at it. Initially, I would be like, oh, should I put in a question? Will people even notice me? And so, no, just go ahead and do that. So networking is the most important thing. And if you have an idea, go talk to people, just, people who may have done this. And where do you find these people? At these networking events. And so be deliberate about that. The other thing I would suggest is that, stay connected to, even though you can't meet people in person, stay connected to your family. That has helped me a lot for your personal life. Reach out to friends you may have never reached out. Take up projects for your company, for your idea, for whatever it is that you have been just putting aside. Like, I guess you can see my camera in the back. Do something that you've always put on the back, or you may have a really awesome idea. And you're like, oh, maybe someday I'll get to it. Now is the time to do it. Start thinking about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much to you, Leena, for doing this, for stepping up and being the first person to do this Inspirational Collisions talk with us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Tracy, for all the work that you guys do at Collider. And this I'm so happy. I'm so excited that this ecosystem is really flourishing, and it's the moment for Rochester right now. So let's make it a big thing.
Definitely. And I wanted to thank all of you who joined us here today on Zoom or on Facebook. Thanks for spending this last 45 minutes of your time with us. We know you could be doing anything else. You'll be able to find this video again on the Collider YouTube page. It was live streamed on the Collider Facebook page, so I'm sure we'll be able to save that and share it as well. And we will put it out as a podcast as well. And we definitely welcome suggestions of Rochester entrepreneurs for upcoming Inspirational Collisions webinars. So thanks so much again for all of you being with us today, and let's enjoy the rest of our day. Thanks so much to Leena for taking time out of her schedule to chat with us, to share her knowledge, to share her experience with the community. So again, if you have suggestions of a great Rochester entrepreneur for an upcoming Inspirational Collision series, let us know. Send us an email at rochesterrising@gmail.com. We're also always looking for sponsors for this podcast. So if this podcast aligns with the mission of your business, let us know. You can click on the sponsor tab on our website at rochesterrising.org, or you can send us an email again at rochesterrising@gmail.com. That's a wrap for us with the podcast today. Be sure that you subscribe and rate our podcast wherever you listen in so that you never miss a story of entrepreneurship and innovation coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. We'll see you here next Wednesday with a brand new episode.